Hello and welcome. This is Common Filth Radio episode 81. Thank you very much for listening. What you are looking at right now, some fan art. Some fan art from Dinkle. Have the Twitter handle linked below. Twitter handle is I'm Dinkle, and it's a bunch of CDRs with my material on it, arranged in such a way that it spells pause loads. Now, if I could do effects live, I would, so you're just going to have to add the doubling effect. Or just queue up the video that I have uploaded to this channel. Anyway, if you have not yet checked out anything on my Bandcamp page, do so. Everything is 35% off if you download the entire discography. It's a great deal, and if you want to buy anything off of Amazon.com, you can do that using the affiliate link below. Click on it, you'll be taken to the front page. Search for your items, add to your cart, check out within 24 hours of clicking on it, and I get a small percentage of whatever you decide to buy at no extra cost to you. So with all that out of the way, 1981, we are in the 80s of Common Filth Radio. What happened in 1981? I'll pull up the Wikipedia article here. U.S. President Ronald Reagan is shot in the chest outside a Washington, D.C. hotel by John Hinckley Jr. Two police officers and press secretary James Brady are also wounded. Well, I hope that doesn't happen to me. What else? What else happened in 1981? The UK pop group Bucks Fizz wins the Eurovision Song Contest 1981 with the song Making Your Mind Up. And now look at what we have with Eurovision. We have, what was that then? Austrian transsexual gender bender? Wow, that's great. That shows us where Europe's mind is. So, whatever. It's fine. It's great. It's progressive. And it's not a symbol of not just decline, but rotting. A rotting corpse of a civilization. Just perish the thought. So we have a story here. This was sent to me by many, many people. Thank you for having me in mind. This is from campusreform.org. Student Satanists assembled to combat budding conservatism at UMM. Group of Satanists affirmed its mission is to address the budding conservatism on campus. The group hopes to make social activism its primary purpose, and they have a pentagram that's in, it's a rainbow pentagram. And we all know what the rainbow means now. It means that it's same love, and it's a form of white identity, so we should really embrace it as white people. Queer Devil Worshippers for a Better Future presents Have You Heard the Bad News? And I guess this is one of their zines, it looks like, and yeah, there's a rainbow pentagram. It's great. And then it says, The Gay from the Void Mother's Pen. So here's a thing. If anything can be attached to a consistent positionality in time and space, if anything is a thing, if anything is if. Hi, my name is Reed. I'm the Void Mother of Queer Devil Worshippers for a Better Future. And I am upset because there just isn't enough devilish revelry in this town. For instance, well, it has a university. So there you go. That's a temple to Satan. Every university is. And I don't care if they consider themselves a Christian university. It's a terrible institution. Now, I'm going to say something after I read this article. And I want you to listen, but I first want you to listen to what campusreform.org has to say. This is written by Anthony Gakowski, investigative reporter. So thank you, Anthony. The University of Minnesota Morris gay devil worshippers are coming out of the woodwork to combat an alleged uprising of conservative voices on campus, the group announced in a campus-wide email earlier this year. The group of Satanists affirmed its position is to address the budding conservatism on UMM's campus, according to a screenshot of the email obtained by Campus Reform. And here's the email. It's boring. I won't read that part. Continuing, I am looking to start a Satanist group at Morris to address the budding conservatism on this campus, which I find abhorrent. Student Reed Larson wrote to his fellow classmates. I'm thinking of calling the group either Gay Devil Worshippers for a Better Future or Queer Satanists for Change. The group has since elected to go by the moniker Gay Devil Worshippers for a Better Future. Rather than merely performing its standard satanic rituals, the group hopes to make social activism its primary purpose. I'm hoping the group will have a social justice platform and further such a platform through good old devilish revelry, Larson wrote. According to a student at UMM who wished to remain anonymous, the budding conservative groups on campus are not actually budding at all. The few conservative groups on campus, including the school's gun club, pro-life club, and college Republicans, have around 20 combined members, according to the source. Should I start booking gigs at these college Republican places, chapters, whatever you call them? These groups, will they host me? Will they give me a buffet ticket at the student union if I come and do live episodes of Tumblristas? Actually, that would be pretty fun, but the cost to benefit ratio is probably not to my liking yet. Larson promoted the cause by distributing copies of the group's monthly newsletter on campus last month, a copy of which was obtained by Campus Reform. The newsletter mocks conservatives as bigots and groups them among necromancers in an article titled 6 Reasons Why Necromancy is Better Than Bigotry. One reason for why the art of communicating with the dead is better than conservatism is because doing so does less environmental damage, the newsletter states. I think we can agree that Flint's water crisis was caused by rich white government officials throwing poor black folks under the bus, and that the area will quite simply never be the same. The article also denounced conservative policies, blaming the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, for many of today's problems. You cannot push your pain onto other people, blaming immigrants for economic trends that were started by NAFTA, the author writes. Whether or not the group receives funds from UMM for its publication remains unclear, but it was distributed on campus with no apparent backlash. The Queer Devil Worshippers for a Better Future is formally recognized by UMM as an official student group, and its constitution was submitted to the University of Minnesota Morris Student Affairs Committee for approval. It appears the group's pending application was approved by the university since the group is now listed on the school's, clubs, and organizations page. What did I tell you about the university? It is a temple of devil worship, whether it is explicit or not. And here are people being honest about it. And that'll tie into with what I'm going to say after I finish this article. According to a copy of the group's constitution, all members must recite the infernal oath. As part of the oath, members must oppose capitalism as a form of oppression. All members must actively oppose all forms of oppression, including but not limited to homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism, ableism, capitalism, and all that spawns from such treacherous lechery. And I'm also going to talk about evil later. I got a question about evil. Now keep in mind, this is what people consider evil. Being opposed to sin, a sinful identity, sinful actions, being opposed to things that are objectively wrong. The opposition to wrong, evil, bad, is homophobic, racist, transphobic. This is what man considers evil. Evil to our decaying civilization, society, culture. Opposing wrongdoing, that's evil. It's up is down, down is up. You already know the story. I don't have to elaborate on it too much. But continuing, according to the group's publication, it meets weekly on campus in a space provided by the university. Fashion tips, blah blah blah. Okay, that's just more of their zine. Oh, that's the end of it. Now, these people are telling you the truth, what they value, who they worship, what they worship. They value worldly things and they take it to its extreme. They say Satan is the ruler of this earth and we like the earth better than we like God. So they tell you this and you're like, no, they're being ironic. No, they're not. What is it about decaying races, declining races and civilization, denying what is in front of them? Denying very basic truth. They say they're queer devil worshippers. Who am I to say that they're not worshiping the devil? I mean, all their mission statement falls right in line with devil worship. Now, I'm going to read this to you. I'm going to read this Wikipedia article of an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. His name was Menachem Schneerson. Okay, Menachem Schneerson, and we're going to go to his apparent messianic qualities, what people believed him to be. Schneerson was criticized for his passion and desire to raise awareness of the coming Messiah. Detractors criticized a children's song with the words, "We want the Messiah now, we don't want to wait," that Schneerson commended. During his life, his admirers hoped that he would be revealed as the Messiah. Admirers pointed to traditional Jewish theology, which teaches that in every generation there is one person who's worthy of being the Messiah. And if God deems the time right, he will be revealed by God as such. Shabbat followers also pointed to a tradition that in every generation there is one person who is considered the Messiah of the generation. Schneerson supporters have claimed that many Jews felt that if there was indeed a person worthy of such stature, it was Schneerson. Although Schneerson constantly objected to any talk that he could be the Messiah, this notion sparked controversy, particularly among those who were unfamiliar with these traditional teachings. Since Schneerson's passing, the Messianic movement has largely shrunk, although many followers still believe him to be the Messiah. Now look, this guy said, no, I'm not the Messiah. I'm not the Messiah. I'm not the Messiah. People are saying, his fellow Jews like, yeah, you are. You're the Messiah. And I've seen clips from Brother Nathaniel videos of news stories, people saying like, yeah, he's the guy. He's the Messiah. And they waited around his grave for him to resurrect. And it's crazy. Yet if you look at the New Testament, somebody said, I am the Messiah and proved it. They're like, no, you're not the Messiah. And with us, we look at, we worship Satan. And we're like, no, you don't. You're just being ironic. Why are we so afraid to call something as it is? Why are we so afraid to confront it? Denying truth is emblematic of a declining people. Very emblematic. We see people who very clearly value satanic things, evil things, and we're like, no, you're just kids, you're crazy kids. No, because you see it everywhere. You think that cuckoldry is a great thing? Think that polyamory is some great thing? We'll get to that a little bit later. We think it's all fine and well. We think, it's just a French thing. It doesn't matter that some people are doing it. What people do spreads. What people do, it grows. They take it to its extreme. Not as fast as others, not as quickly as others, but that's where it goes. We're extreme creatures. Let's go in another direction. Mercantilism. And this is not going to be a Jewish thing, no. It's going to be like an Anglo-Saxon thing. The Anglo-Saxon people are very mercantile people. We are descended from that. We who speak English, we belong to that lineage. White people in general, very keen on colonizing. Colonization and mercantilism created globalism. How well has that worked out for us? We've created a game for ourselves that we can't win. We took it to its extreme. We took this very wrong thing to its extreme, and now look. Now everybody's hitting the panic button. Oh shit. We've gone too far. Donald Trump will undo it, jamming that panic button, but the damage is already done. The moral damage resulting from this unchecked thing, the complete lack of restraint we have, has created more than one void, more than an economic void, more than a financial void. We've also created a moral void, which is a little more hard to quantify, but nobody's interested in what they can't quantify, what they can't put on a spreadsheet, what they can't spurg out over. Statistics, numbers, studies. So as I read this next one from CNN.com, keep that in mind, the colonial impulse. The colonial impulse. Now, here's the story from CNN.com by Tiffany App and Brian Todd. North Korea sentences U.S. student to 15 years hard labor. North Korea has sentenced an American student to 15 years hard labor after accusing him of removing a political banner in a hotel. The U.S. State Department fired back Wednesday, saying the punishment doesn't fit the alleged crime. These people have a very different view of law than we do. And this guy, he wanted to impose that view on people that have nothing to do with him. Nothing to do with him. These people live in isolation. No, you want to make a statement, man. I want to make a statement. A statement. I'm a very important 21-year-old college student. I study philosophy. Oh, no, and I also took a queer theory class. They're very reliable people. What else? The sentence against University of Virginia student Otto Frederick Warmbier? I'm gonna call him Warmbier, dumbass. Hey, Warmbier, you're stupid. The sentence against him is unduly harsh, State Department spokesperson Mark Toner said, calling for his release. The United States urges North Korea to pardon him and to grant him special amnesty and immediate release on humanitarian grounds, Toner said. Warmbier had traveled to Pyongyang on a trip organized by Young Pioneer Tours, a China-based travel company. He was arrested on January 2nd, 2016, as he was about to board a plane to leave the country, on the charge of committing a hostile act against the state. The North Korean government alleged that Warmbier was encouraged to commit the hostile act by a purported member of a church in his home state of Ohio, a secretive university organization, and even the CIA. In court Wednesday, North Korean officials presented fingerprints, photos of a political banner, and surveillance images, proof, they said, that Warmbier committed crimes against the regime. The 21-year-old student pleaded for mercy. My brother and sister need me, he said. I beg that you see that I am only human. How I have made the worst mistake of my life. Warmbier was sentenced to 15 years hard labor. Greg Scarlatui, executive director for the Committee of Human Rights in North Korea, said he may be forced to work in agriculture, which happens with other American prisoners. He may spend his day planting apple trees. It will be fairly grueling forced labor. Warmbier declined to comment on his case. Now some people say, well, it's North Korea, maybe they're not telling the truth. Look, this isn't the first time something has happened where they've accused some Americans of some shit, all right? And, as crazy as North Korea may seem, I don't think that they're crazy enough to risk an international incident over some dork. Who's trying to make a statement. So good riddance. And you know what? If you're North Korea, you're on the outside looking in and you're looking at how Americans behave. You don't want that for your own people if you actually care about them. What do I mean by this? Well, let me just say this. A lot of people have told me that my videos would make for good ISIS recruiting videos, like the Vine Marathons, Tumbleristas episodes. It'd make good propaganda videos for pretty much anything. For pretty much anybody, for any purpose that has to do with America bad, West bad, this is what they want your children to be. So this comes from the Anti-Pause subreddit, and they link to this polyamory subreddit thread. Therapist asked me what the difference between sex and love addiction and polyamory is. Ha 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 ha, oh god, why? Edit to answer questions / sentiments that have been brought up multiple times in one place. My response was that polyamory is about forming multiple loving romantic relationships, whereas sex and love addiction, really any addiction, is using an activity or feeling that is beneficial / harmless in moderation as a coping mechanism that becomes destructive to oneself and those around them. How is that mutually exclusive? That's what you're doing. Is it any wonder that North Korea is a little bit hostile to people that deviate from their rules in the slightest? No, I just want to have love, lots of my love. My heart's just too big for one person. Vomit. And there's more. It was completely out of left field. I had not brought up poly this session and was talking about sex and love addiction in reference to someone platonically close to me who is in recovery / attends SLAA. I don't know what that means. I also hadn't had my coffee yet, so I was definitely not as happy about answering this question as I would be in other circumstances. My primary reasons for seeing this therapist are unrelated to poly. Definitely unrelated to S and LA. It's like these people have this weird language all to themselves. And we're only 2 sessions in, so I'll give it another shot. Is using an activity of feeling that is beneficial / harmless in moderation. Oh, there's a harmless / beneficial aspect about heroin use. Heroin addiction is pretty common, but that's beneficial to begin with. Is it any surprise that North Korea is hostile towards Westerners and any perceived slights by Westerners, any perceived infiltration by Westerners? So, this comes from Slippery People in response to this thread on Anti-Posi. Serious answer, someone addicted to sex and love. This is a quote from the previous thread, I believe, by the way. Serious answer, someone addicted to sex and love would most likely lack the self-control to be upfront and honest about it, and to set and live with boundaries necessary to make polyamory work. Self-control? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? And this is where it begins. This is the part we need to pay attention to. Set and live with boundaries necessary to make poly. There are no boundaries. There's a reason why every civilization, every successful civilization says man and woman. Man, woman, married, having children. You want to do that thing that makes your naughty bits feel good? Okay, get married. Okay, there you go. You have the safety net, you have the structure in which to operate that nonsense within, and society benefits from it. We would not have civilization if we did not have monogamy. Heterosexual monogamy. I mean, is it really that difficult? Is it really that difficult to say, yeah? You look at every pattern of behavior that leads to prosperous societies, that leads to safe, healthy societies. You look at it and you see that this one commonality that says, oh, yeah, monogamy. Which is why I don't get why people bitch about sexual double standards. I take 12 cocks in a week and I'm a slut. That's a double standard. We do have one standard. It's called monogamy. Yet, your novelty-seeking drug brain, it says, "Oh no, that's boring. I'm not willing to work on myself and make my behavior palatable to another human being. Another, if you're a woman, adjust my behavior so that a man will put up with my bullshit when it eventually rears its ugly head." No, behaving is too hard. I just want to be a fucking idiot all the time, and I just want to have meaningless fucking whatever. This is what 90% of people think. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe. But would you be surprised if it wasn't? So, from Slippery People, self-control? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But you'll have to keep in mind that r/polyamory is a Potemkin village, a facade behind which lurks a choir of castrati men with 6-year-old girl levels of testosterone. Polyamory is a vehicle for self-deception, to trick the brain into believing a one-sided relationship with a selfish whore is a progressive, mutually beneficial vow of love, and totally not the most pathetic thing on earth. So when this guy says self-control, he's thinking about the mental gymnastics required in order that he not have to hang himself in a closet. Beautiful. Potemkin Village. We are walking Potemkins. We are a bunch of liars, aren't we? Our fellow Westerner, liars. Dysfunctional liars. Telling us, oh, we're fine, we help you. We're big helps. There's a proud Greek and Roman tradition of polyamory and boy love, physical comfort. He's my apprentice who gives me physical comfort. This is what people believe. You say Alexander the Great, I say John Wayne Gacy. The primary concern of most people is putting up a good show, a good appearance, a good facade, as was described here. And not only that, we want to engage in an anti-life, anti-God. We want to orient our lives around that which is antithetical to any sane structuring of life. Does anything matter to anybody? Do you not listen to this or look at this and say, something's not right about that? There's not even a need to articulate what is wrong with this. Yet, We live in a time, a culture we've created for ourselves where somebody has to make an argument against this stuff. And you say, oh, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter. No, nothing matters except the, whatever. Insert bullshit thing here. Insert bullshit form of idolatry here. That's what matters to people. Fine. Facades upon facades upon facades. That's what it is. We want it all. We want the dysfunction, the short-term pleasure that sin provides. And we want it all while being praised and celebrated as just as valid. Just as valid as those who do the right things for the right reasons. It is unsustainable. So you can fill in the blanks. There's more I can say, but I've been busy this week. I'm tired. I just there would be another time. At any other time, I'd have the energy to keep explaining, but at a certain point, you just have to say, figure it out. Figure it out. So I'm going to do emails that I did not get to last week, and we'll do Reddit questions. So this was sent in. All right, we'll do this. The New Zealand Legion, established in 1933, was a right-wing movement born out of the Great Depression. The group aimed to refocus New Zealand back towards laissez-faire capitalism, undermine British manipulation in the domestic agriculture industry, and lead the country out of depression. It ended a year or two later without accomplishing anything of that caliber. They were never as direct or as radical as the NSDAP or the fascists were, but they were the closest thing to a right-wing nationalist movement New Zealand had. Think of them like Mosley's British Union of Fascists, except less effective and far less radical. They amassed some 20,000 members at its peak, though they bled members profusely due to a litany of problems. One of their big problems was that they were painted as fascists, which they formally denied during every official press release. The second problem they faced was their inefficiency when it came to their official stances. They decided Legionnaire policies democratically and with regular debate, though there was always confusion between what was officially announced policy and what was merely the latest moot to be debated on. The third problem they faced was the lack of a shared goal. Their stated goals and aims were actually antithetical to the goals of other, sometimes more influential members. The Legion adopted Keynesian economics as official policy, despite many legionnaires believing in laissez-faire capitalism. The Legion never made any actual moves against British agriculture investors because many members were staunch loyalists. Even after the Great Depression ended and New Zealand was in recovery, the remnants of the Legion would be quick to deny recovery. They also stood against party politics, stood for regional government, and stood against communism. Despite that, several legionnaires went on to form the National Party. The Legion seldom kept tabs on their regional representatives, and the Legion adopted a planned economy as official policy. Even the founder and leader, Robert Beggs, gave up on the Legion. This overview doesn't even go into the financial difficulties they faced. The Legion quickly became a catch-all term which the Labour Party used to parry against dissent from the right wing, in the same way the Democrats use the word racist. Despite the impressive numbers the Legion acquired, Labour secured the 1935 general election. This is a cautionary tale with two messages. The first is about the necessity for a set of policies from the outset. If the Legion had their priorities straight from the start instead of relying on Legionnaire input for everything, they would have attracted more like-minded individuals. Those like-minded individuals associating with the Legion specifically for those goals would have been leagues ahead of a ragtag group of people bound together by what they aren't. The second is the inherent cancer of a group without strong policies, not the pluralization. This point differs from the first point in that you can have a multitude of strong policies after a group's inception, but by that time the damage may have already been done. Legion did not have a single policy that didn't piss off a large portion of their members one way or the other. Their only real policy was that fascists need not apply. That isn't a policy. That's them admitting they lack policy. If they added a second need not apply, they could have a better group by virtue of continued filtration. They still don't stand for anything, but if they added pinko commie bastards to their need not apply list, at the very least they stop looking like Antifa. This extra filter alone makes them much closer to free market death squads. And of course, you have to start standing for things at some point. Standing against things only takes you so far. Man is a treacherous beast, and must be constrained before he is both moral and useful. This constraint can come from the man himself, or it can come from another. The constraints I discussed here were our nuts. These are heavily inclusive filters. The more important, though more selective, of constraints are ours, quote-unquote ours. As I adjust my chair here. Excuse me. You get a better idea of a person's character based on whether they are Christian, as opposed to whether or not they are not. Of course, that example is a bad one because you can actually derive a lot about a person if they aren't Christian, but that's another discussion entirely. Identity is a wonderful thing because it is a list of constraints that man actively seeks. If your identity is merely white, then you will be constrained by the bounds of white only. You point to Rome and Greece and say, this is who whites are, yet you forget that whites were also the barbarians of the north besieging the Romans and the Greeks. The constraint of white therefore contains the highest of white achievement and the lowest of white depravity. If you give more identifiers on top of white, you get to see a better picture of who this person is and what character they're likely to exhibit. This may seem foreign to the alt-right, but it's very important to have more identifying filters than white if you want the filter of white to survive. White. You think you have no time, but the alt-right is largely a largely American movement, and you're easily a couple years behind Europe. Despite Europe's waning time, they still have it in them to say that all crowds are jerry cucks, all bongs are chavs, and that Slavs aren't white. Slavs. Why is this? This is because of ethnic national identity. They are different culturally, and thus have a plethora of filters on top of the white and European filters. Why do you think national autism bothered beating up white anti-fascists? Because they're dead weight that didn't make the cut. They make the whole weaker, and they exacerbate Britain's Muslim problem. Gays are the dead weight you hold, alt-right. The Trump-supporting ones only constitute 2% of the aristocrat vote. Cutting them off won't be punching to the right. Trust me, you'll be punching far leftward. Wow, what a bigoted and Jewish, dare I say Jewish email, as we know homophobia is very Jewish. And yeah, that's bad because homophilia, there's a proud tradition of it in Europe, and to deny homophilia, to deny homosexuals is to deny humanity, because they really know what humanity is. So I'm gonna discard this email and just forget it ever existed, because it's anti-white. If you're anti-gay, you're anti-white. So shame on you, but thank you for the email. And if I can be serious for a moment here, there are some things in your email I'd like to branch off of a little bit, and I thank you again for taking the time to write this. I interact with the common white, which I don't think a lot of people really do, and assess it honestly on a daily basis. I don't think they rub elbows honestly with the everyday person. And the average everyday white person, you see, they're nice enough. But like I said last week, anybody is nice. Most people are nice if your relationship to them is deep as your thumb, let's say. Or deep as a bathtub. In other words, not very deep at all. Most people are nice when you deal with them that way. But if you get to know people more, you'll find that they're lost and they're too stubborn to follow somebody who knows the way. We have chosen spiritual retardation, emotional retardation, over growth, I guess. How else could you say it? I'll bring up this example again. That rabbi who everybody thought was he's the Messiah, even though he said no, I'm not the Messiah. They're like, no, you're the Messiah. White people, they see very negative behaviors and they say, no, that's not negative. No, that's fine. And if they don't say that, they say it doesn't matter. What does that even mean? Everything matters. You think that your decisions don't ripple throughout time? See, the problem with people saying like, oh, SJWs, they're just taking a liberal concept of original sin. They're completely missing the point. The underlying point is that the way you decide in the present, the wrongdoing you perpetuate, it affects people. I've read all sorts of information on childhood abuse and the effect it has on DNA. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's not just childhood abuse. But abuse, this horrible thing of child abuse, impacts your child's DNA. It restructures it. And so you know I'm not bullshitting you, from Reuters. Reuters.com, DNA changes linked to health effects of childhood abuse. Trauma has lasting effects on mental and physical health that stem from changes to DNA which undermine a person's ability to rebound from stress, according to new research. The small study of abused children adds to a growing body of evidence suggesting that experiences can alter gene activity, explaining how mental anguish can translate to lingering physical effects and possibly opening new avenues for treatment, study authors say. And here we are sitting here, so many of us who really should know better. All of those IQ points, and you can't put it to good use. No, you put it towards spurging out over crime and IQ statistics. Great job. Yeah, you can't realize that how you behave affects. And here you go. It changes, alters, mutilates. How many kids did baby boomers abort? How many babies did baby boomers abort? And of those that didn't, how many of them were abusive towards their children? You think that punk, metal, and grunge came from nowhere? You think that just came out of boredom? And we're going to sit here and say other forms of dysfunction don't affect anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All we need is mo JIZZ fo dem birth rates. We need mo JIZZ fo dem birth rates. I guess nobody told them that there are no eggs to fertilize in the anal cavity. Next, I was watching episode 47, part 2 for Common Filth Radio, and because I was on mobile, there was an advertisement. The advertisement was for RuPaul's Drag Race, and that made me think, what is your opinion on people who exaggerate features of the LGBT community as a form of satire? Oh, they're fetishizing it and glorifying it. That's what they're doing. And that's all I really have to say. I mean, anybody like, oh, we're just making fun of it. Isn't it funny? They eventually start believing it as a sincere thing. Those who hide behind satire, and there's nothing wrong with satire here and there, but if you use it almost exclusively, you're using that to cope with some very dark feelings about how you conduct yourself. Satire is a Potemkin, and that's all I really have to say. All right, next. You are always right on the nail with much of what you say, but in Common Filth Radio 79, you talked about how most people are autistic really resonated with me. Many of the people in the West are consumerist, basal pleasure worshippers incapable of relation to their fellow man. I feel like you may want to read this short book. It really enhanced my understanding of at least part of how we got to this point. To be clear, I don't think this is the source of all our ills. Oh, we have many of them. Many of them. And that's why people tend to narrow their focus when it comes to, whatever. Dysfunction. They narrow their focus, oh, this is the one thing we need to focus on yet, and then they'll hand wave away the rest of the dysfunctional bullshit we value. But I believe it is a significant part of how we got here. Regardless, it's a great read. Think of this more in terms of a friend recommending a book. God bless and no issues if you don't read this or the book below. I'll attach some quotes as a preview as to not waste your time. And this is, I'll look at this later, but the quote you included. Men are rarely aware of the real reasons which motivate their actions. Universal literacy was supposed to educate the common man to control his environment. Once he could read and write, he would have a mind fit to rule. So ran the democratic doctrine. But instead of a mind, universal literacy has given him rubber stamps inked with advertising slogans, with editorials, with published scientific data, with the trivialities of the tabloids and the platitudes of history, but quite innocent of original thought. Each man's rubber stamps are the duplicates of millions of others, so that when those millions are exposed to the same stimuli, all receive identical imprints. It may seem an exaggeration to say that the American public gets most of its ideas in this wholesale fashion. The mechanism by which ideas are disseminated on a large scale is propaganda, in the broad sense of an organized effort to spread a particular belief or doctrine. Thank you for the email. Thank you for the recommendation. And we'll go next. And it goes, Hey CF, greetings from Germany. When evaluating ideas, you seem to put a lot of weight on the inevitable extremes an idea might spawn. Is that accurate? In that light, what is your view of the best form of government, especially considering both the positive and negative extremes they can spawn? Well, I'm talking about extremes as an individual behavior. Because most people are rather atomized in today's society. They don't belong to a collective that says, no, this isn't okay. And even if they do belong to a greater whole, even if they do belong to a community, that community, like the LGBT community, is enabling dysfunction. So you just have to look at it that way. And how it applies to government, I'm not really sure. All I know is that I don't like democracy that much. I think it is... I'm on the record as saying it's unbiblical, and I'm going to stick with that. And what is your opinion on North Korea? Is it as evil and oppressive as the media makes it out to be, or is it just a poor country that is sick of being trampled on and wants to be left alone by the global merchants? Well, we saw a dipshit, a 21-year-old dipshit trying to colonize North Korea with his white devil values. So, you know what? I don't blame them. I don't blame them for wanting to be left alone, because look at what we create. Look at the rotten fruits we bear. Polyamory? Are you shitting me? Anybody who is comfortable with viewing life through the lens of their own experiences, they say, fuck that. Fuck that anywhere. For anybody. Especially me and my family. And you know, maybe North Korea doesn't see things through the lens of their own experiences. But you know what? You hear nothing about polyamory and the gay community from North Korea. You don't see any of that kind of propaganda there, coming from there. And more, I'll finish reading this email. Might the latter be the reason to why it is being slandered so much, or is there factual evidence that points to the government being genuinely malicious to its own people? Well, maybe. I'm not saying I want to live or visit there. I don't want to meddle in their affairs, and I don't want anybody else pushing these satanic values on them. But we can't leave people alone, can we? It is our impulse to fuck with people, and that is wrong. If you read these questions, thanks a lot. The way you interact with your audience and the way you unapologetically defend what you know to be true are the two reasons I enjoy your show. Well, thank you for your support, and thank you for the email. You all contribute a lot to this show. Everybody who sends something in, I greatly appreciate it. And, you know, questions about government are fine, but this isn't necessarily a political show. Politics isn't how governments behave. And I don't deal with government too often. I deal with people. I deal with the horrible things they do and the horrible things they make public. And if some parts of my audience considers that political, not a whole lot I can do about it. All right, next. Hey CF, what is your take on the phenomenon of friends with benefits? I've always felt this particular kind of revulsion towards the concept, and how widespread it seems to be in society. Do millennials think a friendship can be based off of sex? Doesn't seem like any real friendship to me. Nor is it the place for sex unless that friendship is the kind of friendship shared by husband and wife. But really, I can't pinpoint what really makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it. Perhaps you can shed some light about what kind of dysfunction is present in this kind of no-strings-attached stuff, and why it's so prevalent among teenagers and 20-somethings. Something I've noticed is that there seems to be a very wide distance between people who are sexually active and people who are not. Those who are sexually active usually aren't married, especially among this generation. And a lot of this generation is also just completely sexless. So it's dysfunction that goes both ways. Because if we don't have a sex drive, we don't have a species. And if we don't express that sex drive within the confines of monogamy, of marriage, and not the same love kind, not the when I was in third grade I thought I was gay kind of marriage. And you have people who are completely withdrawn from the whole thing entirely, which leads to their impulse to procreate redirected in very, 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 very perverse ways. But I think the disgust you feel towards the friends with benefits thing, as you put it, is that it turns this very serious thing, sexual intercourse, into a transaction, into a consumerist transaction. You give me what I want, I give you what you want, and we're not going to contribute to society in any meaningful way. We're not going to have a functional relationship that bears fruit. It's ridiculous. Oh, but let me guess, that's not fun, right? No, everything has to be fun, everything has to be entertaining. What good is life if you're not happy? It's incredible. It is. Is the whole point of life to be happy? Oh, I'm just happy. It's just happy. And yet it's the people who focus on happiness, worldly happiness the most, that are the most miserable. Because they place their faith in false, unreliable things. That's all that needs to be said, I think. Maybe somebody else can add to that. And feel free to do so. But next. Greetings, Common Filth. I recently discovered and began listening to the backlog of your excellent content. I wanted to get your thoughts / advice on a course of action to get out of social and life gridlock. In my case, I've existed in a state of generally antisocial and shut-in lifestyle and haven't made any progress on a pursuit of establishing a long-term career for over a year now. Well, I think that's more asocial than antisocial. When I hear antisocial, I think people who, I don't know, perform autopsies on live cats, something like that, and make movies out of it. To me, that's antisocial. People who meet people for the sake of luring them back to their apartment and killing them repeatedly, doing it over and over again with different people. That's antisocial. Serial killers, antisocial. I have ideas of going into a trade due to my lack of abilities in STEM fields and the uselessness of humanities, but have no idea if I would actually have enough interest to properly dedicate myself to such a field. Part of my problem is that I have a crippling fear of choosing a path to follow and dedicating time and money to something I might despise. Is my desire for establishing a plan for myself to prevent wasting resources something I should continue to abide by, or is it a poor excuse for my own lack of action and agency? It is a poor excuse. Again, I just said this a few seconds ago. The point of life isn't to be happy. It is incredibly rare for somebody to be happy with the career path they choose. To be perfectly frank, happiness shouldn't factor in at all into your decision making with regard to a career. What you should be looking at in terms of potential careers is this a legitimate skill? Will this skill still have a demand? Will the marketplace, will society have a demand for this skill? Will this skill provide a living for myself and my future family? And that's it. Happiness is not even secondary. Again, it shouldn't even be a thought at all. And you have more email, I'll read it. I've always been a fairly introverted person, but it has rapidly become obvious that my antisocial behavior isn't healthy or constructive towards becoming a contributing member of society, getting married and establishing a nuclear family. What can I do to escape this negative behavior, particularly when going out of my way to engage in healthy social behavior, as the cognitively dissonant effect? Like I'm going against my own nature in a small way. Thank you for reading this, and thank you for all your thought-provoking commentary. I apologize in advance if this topic has already been discussed at length on Common Filth Radio. And another thing you need to consider, your age. I don't know how old you are, but I'm willing to bet that you're pretty young. You're feeling this way because you've accomplished nothing in life. And okay, that's fine. Your brain is telling you, get something done so I stop feeling like this. Even if you hate your job, you will still gain a sense of accomplishment once you compare it to another period of your life, such as this. You'll say to yourself, things are better now than they were back then. And for that, I am thankful. At least that's how you should look at it. That's how a sane, healthy person should look at it. Get something done. That's how you escape it. That's how you escape this negativity. But thank you for the question, man. Best of luck to you in the future. Longtime fan here. Been listening to your show for a very long time. Felt like it was a better time than any to write in, leave some comments, and add to the discussion. Hope you're buckled up, buckaroo, because this vroom vroom is going deep in Paw's hole. Your Vine specials and Tumblr's videos are great. Totally love them, and I've even considered making a YouTube account similar to yours for the purpose of uploading crazy shit I found on the internet, but the main inspiration came from Cultural Marxist Thread Simulator. But sadly, I never got around to doing it. But on the bright side, as it stands, I feel like it'd make more sense to just give you material, since you have a larger reach and audience. So from time to time, I might drop you an email with some stuff I found deep within the web. Anybody who makes anything, here's my advice: don't bother paying tribute to anybody. Make something because you want to do it, not because somebody else inspired you to do so. You have to find something that you say to yourself that nobody else is saying, and that's how you create good stuff, I think. And if it's not original, then fine. But what you take away from it is that you created something out of just your own willingness, out of your own impulse. People tell me all the time, you should check out this book by this author because they're saying a lot of the same stuff that you said. And I appreciate that, but I appreciate the recommendations, but I'm using this as an example. Many people have come to the same conclusions that I have arrived at, but I've done it because I'm comfortable with making conclusions based on my own experiences. Viewing life through the lens of nobody. Viewing the life through my own lens. Come to your own conclusions. Don't rely on anybody else, and who cares if those conclusions are original or not. Continuing. Anyway, since this week's episode from the date of writing this focused on a zoophile confession on Reddit, and the one prior covered puppy play and Zootopia. So I decided to stick my hand into the bag of paws and pulled out a degenerate crock of shit for you to bring to light. This gift comes from the oh-so-loved furry community. We all know furries tend to chant the mantra that their characters transcend their human forms and represent something more spiritual that relates to them. By the way, Zootopia is the #1 movie at the box office, American box office, for the third straight week. Just thought I'd add that. This is usually followed by them fervently whining that it's not bestiality. Honestly, I think the majority of us know this is an empty statement and a blatant lie. And here's a prime example of why. So they're a furry artist, K-Beer, who's been drawing a few comics for autism books. This artist has a following of over 35,000 on the website Fur Affinity. From what I can gather, it claims to be a girl and has been in a long-term relationship with another furry artist who happens to be a bisexual cuckold. One of its newest comics is titled Man's Best Friend with Benefits. And well, to sum up the story, here's a comment. And there's an Imgur link. And it says, "Damn, dude's got a pretty twisted set of moral principles with regards to sex. Oh, I shouldn't be jacking off to nudies of my girlfriend while we're on a break. It's not right. But I guess there's nothing wrong with fucking the stray dog I found at the park." Okay, that's something. Yes, that's right. The legitimate story of the comic follows an edgy furry faggot trying to have sex with his prudish furry girlfriend. Yet she keeps putting him off. As a result, he finds a stray dog in a park and takes it home. Doesn't end Doesn't end there, but he then brings friends over too. Now, you think people who cling to the statement we're not all like that, we're not into bestiality, would reject, scorn, and demand a cease in this comic's production, right? Nah, this comic seems to have no backlash on the comment section. The community loves it, and the artist got a lot of autism bucks working on it. Seems like the community universally loves it. Here are 25 comments I pulled from the comment section just to show you how mentally ill, dangerous, and spiritually unfit these people are. Yeah, let's look at it. Sure. On a related note, bestiality is legal in 13 states. 13 states in the United States. However, sexually penetrating a non-human animal can be classified as animal abuse. So if you're going to fuck a dog, make sure you're on the bottom. Everybody enables anybody. I don't have to read all this to tell you that. Even if people say, "Oh, I'm not like that," they know people who do and they support them. Just by the very fact that they belong to the same community. It's insane. Like I said, if what you value is the tribe, you're going to have to answer for every member of that. Because every member of that tribe is a reflection on you. For example, this other thing you showed me, this other screenshot, you disgust me, and this is quoting now, "You disgust me in your lack of open-mindedness, sir. We are furries. The furry fandom is supposed to be a place of understanding, a place where we can fit in. But what of those of us who have zoophilia?" This person's not very good at writing. "It's the way they were born. There were born. We furries, there were born. We're born. And in the beginning, there were furries." Insane. "I do not see why you should need to hide who you are, as long as no one is getting hurt." This is hurting me reading this. No one's getting hurt. No one's getting hurt. You know, I showed a couple of friends that one girl who's all like, "I fuck dogs. And doesn't affect you. Doesn't hurt you." And I showed it to them. You know, I wasn't trying to put it into any context for them other than it's sick and this is what's out there. And one of them said, like, "Man, that made my soul hurt." So there you go. There you go. With no prodding by me. They don't know what I do here. No prodding, no me influencing them. That's what one of my friends said with regard to a dog fucking girl who's all like, "Yeah, fuck dogs." When people say, "Oh, it doesn't affect you," I guess it's a function of a social atomization. Or maybe it's just a complete lack of awareness. Situational awareness. Maybe it's an autistic thing. I wouldn't be surprised. Most people seem to be on the spectrum. Everything affects everything. Everything matters to some extent. But nobody gets it. Anyway, hope this adds to your discussion in some way. Spent an hour sorting through the comments, had to go outside halfway through because I was about to vomit, not even kidding. I was going to send more, but honestly this shit was too disgusting to sift through. If the slippery slope isn't obvious at this point, I don't know what will make it apparent. This is just evil and these people are beyond unhealthy and are truly dangerous. Now add this to what you've been saying on your show, especially regarding Zootopia, and you get an idea of how fucked up our world is. Absolutely. Next, I have a Tumblrista for a teacher. At my school, I have an English teacher who is a feminist, purple-haired, 32, maybe 33 years old, weighs probably 230, maybe 330 pounds. Oh my goodness. And told us that being white is a privilege. And she also told us how she felt bad for women in the Elizabethan age when we were reading Romeo and Juliet. Just in case you were wondering, I'm a freshman in high school. I'm not asking for advice or anything. I just felt like sharing how insane it is to deal with Tumblristas in real life. They're out there. I'm not making this stuff up. People will always say, like, when I show screenshots, read stuff, it's always like, "Ooh, those Tumblr people, Tumblr this, Tumblr that." When in reality, we're talking about feminists, homosexuals, lesbians, transsexuals, bisexuals. That's what we're talking about. Tumblr is just a shield. That you attack the shield rather than looking behind the shield and saying, oh, that's who's holding it. Like I said earlier, we are deathly afraid of calling things by their correct name. We are petrified of just saying what things are, seeing things as they are. Americans are the most psychotic people. The West in general, we see people engaging in these very dysfunctional behaviors, and we blame it on a website rather than blaming the people engaging in the behavior and blaming the identity group that they identify with first and foremost. But no, they're not like that. Who cares? As if that invalidates what is being done. Observe who your children are paying tribute to. And we'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that real soon. Next. I really enjoy your content, CF, and wanted to send you this, not only to confirm what you say is morally true, but factually true as well for anyone still on the fence. Gender ideology harms children, and that's from the acpeds.org. The reason I'm so excited about this article is that it's from such a major and credible source that these people have no affirmation other than "that's sexist," which not only shows the weakness of their argument, but the ideology as a whole. My question is a bit of a weird one. I was raised in a family environment that encouraged thought as well as being open-minded to others' ideals. My godfather is a homosexual, and I'm in a bit of a weird position. I agree with everything that you have said about gay culture and what implication it has on others' lives. My problem is he doesn't spew any of the forms of this culture I've grown to hate. You wouldn't even know he was gay. He's a 50-year-old Bostonian, owns a gun, history nut, military history specifically, and is a very intelligent man. He does have someone, and they have been together since I could remember. They don't commit the sins of spreading disease or their culture onto me or anyone, and the only sin they really commit is just the act itself. Well, keep in mind that these people are not actually monogamous. I mean, I'm not making any assumptions here. The New York Times of all people admit that gay marriages, 50% of them are open, which is to say that they're fucking around on each other. Anybody who's been with any of these people who say, I've been together with this person forever, they haven't. They have this unresolved trauma that they live out every day. This unresolved sexual trauma that they live out every day of their lives. And they don't realize it. Or maybe they do and they're just like, it makes me feel like I'm God. So let's get that out of the way. I find it hard in my heart to do anything because I have known these people my entire life and have come to respect them for who they are, but at the same time I know what they're doing is wrong based on the act alone, and everything that has happened is the results of these similar actions. Well, what does that say about your parents? That they say, oh, this will be your godfather. I'm not trying to get you to hate your parents, but what does that say about them? What are they doing? I've known these people my entire life and have come to respect them for who they are. At the same time, I know what they're doing is wrong based on the act alone, and everything that has happened is the result of these similar actions. One part of me wants to say that this sinning is only contained within the bounds of these people as long as they contain those bounds and do not pool into the big pond that contains our society as a whole. It would still be wrong, but allow society to flourish into what it once was. However, the other part of me wants to tell them it's not okay because those who act only on desires end up in horrible situations and positions. I've heard the two consenting adults thing and I hate it as much as you. However, I don't know what path I should take. I'm a man who understands the need for faith and believes in the truths that fate provides us. This man has been like an uncle to me and has helped me become the person I am today. He's connected deeply into me as a person. I have the ability to look at myself without blind ignorance and ask myself what I must do. A sin is a sin with no justification. You talk a lot about how people do not like stuff that applies to them because it makes it difficult for introspection, etc. I do not intend to take this path of ignorance and desire to figure out what I want to do and what I should do. I would like to know your opinion because I can't really find anyone I find logical enough to talk about it with. This is another situation where your age is very important because most people can put their best foot forward when it comes to interacting with younger people. And even if you are a little bit older, I give this guy credit for not doing any crazy shit around you. But like I've said, and I've been proven right time and time again on this, dysfunction begets dysfunction, darkness begets darkness. Humans are extreme creatures. They will advance their dysfunction. Without a doubt, it will advance, it will grow, they will get bored with it. And nobody's telling you to hate this person. I'm not telling you to hate this person, whoever he is, but realize there's darkness about him. Take it for what it is. Forgive people for their sins, but don't get enveloped. Because there is something to get enveloped in. So with that being said, we will go to the Reddit thread, question comment thread. Every week, for every episode rather, there is a question comment thread that you can participate in r/commonfilth. And here we go. Oh my lord, we're on episode 81. We've come a long, long way. I don't have a question. I just wanted to congratulate you on 81 episodes of Common Filth Radio. And hope for another 81 episodes of soul-crushing reality. Admittedly, 81 is a strange number to realize how far we've come, but it only hit me just now. Yeah, that's a lot of episodes. God willing, we will get to 100 episodes this year. It is rather strange to think about. You keep doing something, you get into a habit, and you look back and you realize how far away you are from the starting line. It's interesting, and I'm glad that people have prodded me along, who have encouraged me along this path. It's been very rewarding, and I'm thankful to everyone who has helped make it possible. ACF, don't know if you answered this before, but when did you first realize the truth about our natural aristocracy? Is there a story behind it? Like in everything, it's like small cracks in a dam. It's not one single crack that makes the water come gushing out, that breaks the dam rather. But I will tell you one of the initial cracks. You remember the yellow pee-pee monster? A YouTuber back in 2009. He uploaded a bunch of videos of himself going into public restrooms and pissing over every possible surface. Every surface in that restroom you can imagine. Now, this YouTube account got taken down pretty quickly. And I discovered it sometime after the fact. I found an archive, found the videos, and laughed at how absolutely absurd it was. So what I did, I started a YouTube channel where I re-uploaded a lot of these videos. And a day later, after I had uploaded a couple, I checked the inbox of the channel I had started, and I had messages from all these gay dudes, like saying, "Oh man, your videos are so hot. I'll pay you to piss on me." I was so freaked out by that, I deleted it immediately. I deleted the channel immediately. And that was my first exposure just to how depraved people out there are. So many desperate, lonely, dysfunctional people out there. And what does it say about our society that we promote that? We celebrate that. I don't get it. I don't get it. Could you please add the main show's episodes to the Bandcamp discography? I want to hear them all, but converting the YouTube videos to MP3 for needs would be a slog. If you have the entire series as MP3, I'll buy them off you. Thank you for your daily struggle against evil. I think I answered this exact question last week. And I would put them all up on Bandcamp. It would take a long time, and I would do it, but the problem with that is they're available here for free, and that would discourage people from buying them. And the other problem is that there is a size limit. Even if I do put a price tag on all of the episodes on Bandcamp, there is a size limit to each audio file that you can upload. I think it's like 600 megabytes, and many episodes exceed that number. And you can only upload in WAV files. You can't upload them in MP3. So that's another hurdle. But like I said, there are many good browser add-ons. I use one myself to download videos from video websites. And there are other people giving their recommendations. It's just that there are limitations with what I can do uploading to other places, other avenues that I have to deliver my content. And next, pinknews.co.uk. Less than half of America's youth are straight, new survey finds. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think it will affect the future? There's actually another thread on this in the subreddit, which I want to get to. And regarding the sexual studies and their authors, and this is from our subreddit. So check this out. I'll try to remember to link to this. But yeah, a user, or rather a follower of ours on Reddit, took the time to write this. I think it's really good. But the conclusion it comes to here, the TLDR, quote, sexual studies are made by degenerates, pedophiles, and torturers. Hence, they're not that relevant, and the danger is more the effect it has on people than the actual study itself. If people treated Kinsey as he was, a degenerate child molester and self-mutilation enthusiast, the sexual revolution wouldn't have happened this quickly. So that study about half of teenagers being sodomites, I would not take it as fact. What I take as fact is the reaction of people agreeing with it. Now, I have my skepticisms with regard to, half of America's youth. I've read another study saying that half of Britain's youth are also not straight, but I come across these people on Twitter all the time. They like my stuff and retweet it for some reason. Because, it's apolitical content. I post funny pictures on there and among other things. And I out of curiosity, look at their profiles. And this one I found this morning. It says, from this girl on Twitter. Her profile says, 14, lesbian. 14, lesbian. Among some other stuff. But that's the most important part. And that's what's first. Age 14, second thing, lesbian. Why do our youth feel the need to pay tribute to our natural aristocracy, those people who are so much better than us? We're totally for them. Don't get us wrong. But our youth, why do they feel the need to pay tribute to LGBT this, trans that, non-binary this, gender fluid that? And everybody says, oh, they're just going through a phase. No phase I went through, or anybody else I knew. And isn't this a goal of these politically motivated sexual deviants? To influence children? Look what fuck hate does. Fuck hate is NAMBLA with plausible deniability. They feature kids in their agitprop pieces kissing each other, making out. Children, underage children, they're sexualizing them. And saying like, if I grow up to be gay, I want to get married someday. And then these boy sticks his tongue down some other boy's throat. It's sick. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these kids are like, yeah, I sexually experiment. I wouldn't. Even if the people who initially studied this stuff were child molesters, I wouldn't be surprised because look who's influencing. Look who is influencing the children. It's them. It's them. They work in schools. They work as teachers, administrators, professors, guidance counselors. But whatever the truth is, and it's one of those two things, it has to be. It says a lot about where we are as a culture. And where we are, not a good place. And no amount of JIZZ FODEM birth rates is going to fix that. Next. Hey, so you have no big questions for me today, but I'd just like to bring your attention to the newest fad on college campuses. The gay devil worshippers for a better future. I think the article can speak for itself. Yeah, covered that at the beginning of this show. And you and many other people on Twitter sent me that, so thank you for bringing it to my attention, all of you. Next, were you inspired by the Snatcher or VA11 Hall A original soundtrack in the creation of Beijing to Mogadishu? No, actually. How I make that stuff is I find these very obscure discs that seem to have a very limited production. They're from like the 80s and 90s, And yeah, I use them as samples, and that's how I create this stuff. I like found footage, so I make sound out of found footage, and that's how that came into existence. Also, on the subject of pushing the show in a lighter direction, sorry, I think it's just the human desire to have contrast. A period of activity and a period of rest, as opposed to asking for a full-length show about WWE, Mexican fizzy drinks, and life being cool. A period of comfort to make the discomfort that much more striking. Edit, this is already present within the series to an extent, and yeah, I get what you're saying, and I get why people want to see that out of me, more positive content, more lighthearted content. But like I said, I just feel it's decadent to talk about that stuff, and I have nothing against people who do. It's just I feel uncomfortable doing that. And not saying that I shouldn't go out of my comfort zone. For lack of a better term, I think it's out of character. Relative to my other stuff, Beijing to Mogadishu, the video, didn't get that many views, which is fine. I'm not complaining about it. But, people have expectations, and I need to meet them to some extent. So, that's all. That's what I have to say on the subject. Next. ICF, I do apologize for not writing in lately. I've been getting my neg hole paused and milking my cummies in light of joyous news. Australia, referred to as Pause-Australia, may well have its first transgender politician. Isn't this just fantastic? Naturally, it is when people say, like, oh, we need more JIZZ for them birth rates, Australia has, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, very restrictive immigration policies. And this is still happening. Still happening in Anglo countries and in Europe in general, except for Eastern Europe. So, there is a spiritual component to society that transcends policy, transcends statistics, but nobody cares. Because that would require us to face the fact of the matter. That there are many things beyond our control. And everybody says, oh, don't be defeatist. How can it be defeatist if it's a battle I never fought? Never had the chance to fight. That's all. Naturally, it is worse than it seems on the surface. This poor maligned soul will be running in a degenerate inner city electorate, so there's a good chance he will actually become the first freak ever to become an Australian MP. Though the fun of the story really begins when we look at how he came to be a garish caricature in the first place. He was a military man, externally a proud patriot, who trained his fellow soldiers in extreme sports. It would appear that my chair is, need some WD-40 on this thing. He was okay, I read that part. It would appear that this was just part of his external crisis, though. Or his internal crisis, rather. I would propose that he was taking up these hyper-masculine activities in a vain attempt to vanquish the thoughts of his anus being savaged in public toilets. Why do these trannies always seem to live ridiculous hyper-masculine lives before admitting they want to wear dresses and sit on erections? It's because they're confused. They're incredibly confused. It's not external. It's like when I talk about bodybuilders and how they're obsessed with the male aesthetic, and it is usually revealed over time that they are incredibly homosexual. It's not as if these people are doing this out of passion. They're doing this out of a very deep insecurity. They're doing it as a show, as a facade. And for what reason? It's only they can know their innermost thoughts and feelings. But these inner thoughts and feelings are apparently so overwhelming that they're like, oh, I'm a manly man. Look how manly I am. I'm a manly man. Look at how much I lift, bro. I'm a manly man. Why do they live ridiculous hyper-masculine lives before admitting they want to wear dresses and sit on erections? It couldn't possibly be the vile ideas we give children about gender in schools now, could it? It's also sex education. We introduce children to this information far too early and far too often. Nobody realizes the horrible impact sex education has had on us. We don't realize the horrible effect the sexual revolution has on us, because it would require us to confront something about our spirit, our psyche and how horribly wrong it has become, and that demographics have nothing to do with it. Obsessing over statistics only takes you so far. You miss a lot of what's actually important. But apparently conduct and behavior, that doesn't matter. Like I said, friends of mine say we'd rather die of cancer than get in a fight. It's sick. Craven people we are. What's disturbing is that this thing had its sex change operation funded by the taxpayer. Oh, who else? By the taxpayer, by the Australian Defence Force, and the military paid for it. Great. Through the taxpayer, through the military. Great. He was then allowed to continue his decorated record of service as a captain teaching extreme sports to our diggers, who knew getting fucked in the ass while wearing drag would be the main event at this year's X Games. Snowboarding is for pussies, getting paused is the new extreme. We'll do it while skydiving too. This is what the Australian military has become. Though it's not new, one of the top brass in the ADF is also a tranny. Yeah, the same thing's happening here in America. I think we might actually have Sweden beat in the coveted competition of most cucked military in the world. To be fair though, the military has been going down the shitter here ever since they started letting women in. Yeah, same here. I've met a couple of military women and they're exactly like the stereotype. Disgusting whores who were discharged while wearing the discharge of several men after a sex scandal. Worst of all is that this closet homosexual who clearly has some very disturbed views about both masculinity and femininity is raising 3 children, and judging by the empowered glasses this tranny's wife wears, the poor little buggers never stood a chance. Again, mo JIZZ fo dem birth rates only takes you so far. Because mo JIZZ fo dem birth rates, well, they're doing the right things on paper. On paper. I can't wait to hear the media tell me that this is the new nuclear family or something equally repugnant. Why, oh why, the ADF is embracing such mental illness is beyond me. It's a spiritual thing. It is that which cannot be put to paper. That which cannot be turned into a statistic. You know, somebody brought up a good point. Maybe it's society that is difficult to alter. Whereas biology is something you can fix. You know, you could take a vitamin if you have a vitamin deficiency, and there you go. You no longer have that deficiency if you keep up with those vitamins. Whereas society, the cure for what ails society is much more difficult because you don't know if it will be a cure at all. We can all debate on what would be the best course of action. We could all imagine what types of legislation we could pass, but really, would it have any effect? Would it impact anything at all? Maybe not. The West must be a fucking joke when we put boots on the ground in a war zone. It's not hard to put yourself in the headspace of a jihadi and imagine the contempt they must hold us in. Even when we deploy to their homeland to stop their wretched caliph gaining ground on us, the military we bring is full of sluts and poofters. They probably imagine our barracks being non-stop orgies of pause and unwanted pregnancies disgracing the flag we fly, and they likely aren't far off the mark. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, we actually have the chance to double the speed our country throws itself down Satan's staircase. That's right, there's actually a second beautiful and stunning woman running in our next election. This one spends his time trying to bring the Catholic Church before discrimination tribunals, for politely and quietly distancing itself from the wickedness of the sodomite. Not much to say about this one. At least he didn't procreate, though. Yeah, at least. If you have to say at least about something you've lost, you're gone. You're done. One thing I would ask of you and the listeners is to look up the pictures of these gorgeous and brave women while your mic is running. The link to the article is below, and I look forward to hearing your infectious angelic laughter. No homo, OFC. The military tranny actually looks more masculine now than he did back before he mutilated himself with surgery, and the second one just looks like a burnt out old school metal icon. Makes sense, I guess. He did spend the 80s dressed like a girl to piss off his parents. Pause you later, matey. Alright, I clicked on it, opened it up in a new tab, and here we go. Written by Megan Palin. Who are you, Megan Palin? It's from news.com.au. Great, their website can't even take me to author profiles without giving me a 404. Great. Very professional. Very, very nice. And you get paid how much money to do this? In the caption of the picture, the comparison picture, Bridget Clinch in an earlier picture of when she was Matthew. Wow, how dare you dead name her or Zer? I feel like I can't wash myself clean of all the stuff I've learned. Dead naming, alternative pronouns. Don't call me Miss or Mr. It's Mix. Mux. I guess being obsessed with the masculine aesthetic, you get obsessed to the point it becomes a false god. You want to serve it. You bow down before it. You pay tribute to it, and it is a false god. Everybody puts their faith in a false god, and this is what becomes of it. You mutilate yourself. All right, next, and I gotta hurry up because there's a lot left, and a lot of these are links to stuff, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to get to it, so I do apologize. You can resubmit it in the following thread. Next, ACF recently discovered your show, and it's provided me with small amounts of hope that things might get better. Well, that's usually the opposite of what people take from this show, but hey, I'm glad you find a little bit of hope in it. What are your thoughts on the problem of evil? I've heard different opinions on this issue, but would like to hear how you approach it. I'm currently agnostic, but have been looking into Christianity and the importance of having unconditional faith in God. However, the existence of all this degeneracy and spiritual moral bankruptcy has impeded my ability to have faith in a higher and transcendent power. Any advice for me? I live in Canada, by the way, which is essentially Sodom and Gomorrah on steroids and overflowing with pause loads from every nook and cranny. Case in point, Syrian refugees get housed in the same hotel as a furry convention. Yeah, I heard about that one. Lots of people sent that one to me. I'm interested in buying some of your shit on Bandcamp and showing it to my friends. What should I buy first? Let's go with Tumblr's Raw Volume 3. It's a movie, I guess, because I put it all in one file. But yeah, I feel it is excellent work, and it's entertaining. It's indicative of what I do. Tumblr's Raw Volume 3. So yeah. And the problem of evil, look, if you're basing your evil off of human standards, evil is transphobia. It's homophobia. Whatever that means. And we know that's wrong. Man's standard of what is evil, man in his present manifestation, or Zer's Zim present manifestation, it's wrong. So if their definition of evil is wrong and there's no God, then there is no evil. It's just, there just is. Nothing has a rhyme or a reason. Nothing has a characteristic. It just is. People ask me, how do you believe in God when you cover all that you cover? It's easy. Because without God, all of this stuff, there'd be no reason for me to oppose it. Because there's no characteristic. There is no negative characteristic about it. About any of the behaviors I cover. But when I talk about what I talk about, every cell in my body tells me, wrong, evil. This will damage you. This is damaging you right now, just talking about it. Every cell in my body, it sends me a wordless message. That's the voice of God. Man's definition of evil, what man considers evil, is worthless. And its worthlessness will continue indefinitely. And there can be no doubt about that. Not sure if this is of any interest. Perhaps a CF culture spot. Although these 3 British/English music art groups, you'll find all the goodies that you talk about, from natural aristocracy, scatology, to the earliest furry to transgender, and all in a early fringe alternative art/culture. If you observe where all this went, it wouldn't surprise you. Throbbing Gristle, I've heard of them. Psychic TV, haven't heard of that. Let's check it out. Oh, okay. Well, there are a lot of links here, and I would have to stop recording to take the time to synthesize all this information, and I do intend on doing that when I find the time. It's just while I'm recording, it's pretty difficult to do, but best wishes to you as well, and I apologize for not managing my time more wisely. Hey, CF, I would like it if you could give your thoughts on this. I looked up the author, and let's just say one look is all it took to know everything about her. Katha Pollitt is a poet and essayist. Her poetry has been praised for its serious charm and spare delicacy. What the hell does that mean? And there's an author called What's Wrong with Gay Marriage? Will someone please explain to me how permitting gays and lesbians to marry threatens the institution of marriage? Because it's not. It is a lie. It's willful ignorance and denial. It's just masturbation, taxpayer-funded masturbation, with a lot more domestic violence, by the way. I'm sure you're familiar with the argument, if God is real, then why does cancer exist, and other similar variations. But it brings me to an interesting question. Why does God allow his people to suffer even if they declare their faith in him? I don't know if you're familiar with what happened to Christ, but it's pretty brutal. Far more brutal than cancer. And then a comment that you received on this comment. Basically, this world is not the important one, and suffering, pain, illness, dying is a way to tell you that you won't live forever, and that is what is important, and that what is important is what comes after. Seeking comfort and good life is secondary, and often good life and comfort, man's definition of what good life, keeps you away from God. It keeps you loyal to worldly things, and worldly things always fail. Time and time again. That's the one thing we can count on the world doing. It's stupid to have your faith in humanity. It is stupid. And it's stupid to say, well, we shouldn't suffer when Christ suffered far greater than any of us ever could. Alright, next. I have a theory regarding those vapid American Idol California Apple pop culture zombies you talk about a lot. Those normies that are as common as generic as NPCs in a video game. I know it sounds weird, but I think that critical thinking is difficult for them. I don't just mean they are mentally retarded, I think they aren't wired for it. It hurts to think too much, so they naturally just go with the flow. I asked some old people about the state of affairs in the world, and one explained to me that life is better if you don't think so much about everything and just go with the flow. Moral apathy, right there. That's something I talk about a lot, not so much lately, but, the point still stands. That thread is still woven throughout my work. People think it's hard to care. I think it's difficult not to care. But we're wired differently. I don't know. That's such an insane way of seeing the world. Oh, just go with the flow. Look, I get it. You can't fight every battle. But you need to exercise some control. So you're nothing. Maybe it's because they're born to be followers and serfs. You can't have your workers be arguing with the nobility about policy, so maybe this is to facilitate centralized authority. Maybe it's a lot like how women tend to naturally be subservient to authority, be it because God decided that to be the nature between man and woman, or because of natural selection making it so that submissive women survived more after being conquered. I think it's a similar impulse. I'm not entirely sure, since even though beta males tend to be guilty of this 100% of the time, plenty of alphas are also sodomites and do the same, so obviously it's more mental than physiological. Well, the problem with that is that too many women are stubborn. They're stubborn, they're ridiculously stubborn, and for no good reason. They give you all the shit for what? Oh, to test your leadership abilities? Well, look what they're testing you on. Look what they'll end a friendship over. It's the stupidest shit, or end a relationship over. The stupidest shit. Continuing. Never more than a little reliance on genetic indicators, and I don't believe genetics to play a large role in this because I've seen the apple fall far from the tree in this regard. Yeah, genetics, I used to believe that genetics determine a lot of things, but observing just like, for example, athletes, how fathers can be, greater athletes than their sons, or their sons be greater athletes than their fathers. It goes both ways, which goes to show you that there are other factors at play. I mean, sure, there has to be a spark written in the genetic code in terms of athletics, but it doesn't mean that spark's going to turn into fire, so to speak. So genetics are important, but I'm skeptical with regard to how important they actually are. So, but I wonder if what we see in these kind of cultural zombies is something that was always there but went unnoticed when the culture wasn't so polluted. Well, you have the symbolism of the sheep and the shepherd, which is good symbolism, but are they sheep if they're too stubborn to follow? And that's that's what we're dealing with out there. People who aren't capable of guiding themselves, yet they're too stubborn to follow somebody who is capable of guiding them. Maybe God intended some people to be followers and not think for themselves, but personally I think it's disengaged parents that don't instill that instinct for independent thought at an early age that's responsible for this. Certainly, that plays a little bit of a part, but like I said, a bunch of cracks in a dam. It's not just one that causes the whole thing to break. After all, if you put in the world and the first 3 years of your life involves being left on your own and watching television as opposed to learning how to use your head and taking in the world around you, you won't be predisposed to think very hard in any lateral way. This is a good comment, and I don't have a whole lot more to add, but some people, you express a negative opinion about that which they consider beyond reproach, and they lash out at you in the most vicious kind of a way. And I don't have to describe who sits at the top of our social hierarchy. That's who they defend. So I don't have to go into the details, but the fact that they're so eager to defend, that they passionately defend that which is really indefensible, it shows to me that they aren't entirely sheep-like. Or maybe they are. They're doing this stuff without thinking, and that's what makes them a sheep. I don't know. I do not know. Next. I know this will probably seem really vague and could be difficult to respond to, but personally can't take much more of the degeneracy and the insane permissiveness plaguing our society anymore. I don't want to get into too many specific examples, but between SJW's politically correct culture, the apparent public acceptance of outwardly psychotic and violent behavior by any oppressed or victimized group, the way the media either ignores it or paints it as being acceptable and in some cases even positive, I really just can't take it anymore. Although I was raised Protestant, I am not really a religious man and went through an edgy atheist phase in my teens. I was pretty degenerate and politically correct myself, including dude weed, Lamau, and dude drugs in general, Lamau, as well as experimenting with the same sex. And it took years of hanging around terrible human beings for me to realize what I was doing to myself. Now that I see all of this for what it is, I have to say at least being degenerate was numbing and allowed me to fit in with my equally degenerate peers. Look, if lowering yourself to that extent, if that's what you'll do for company, the company isn't worth it. It is better to be alone than to keep the company of people like that. And I get it. It goes against our instincts because we're social creatures, but like you said, it's terrible. What you're doing was terrible to yourself, and you were around people that enabled that. If you're, it is better to stand alone. More on a moral level. Not saying shut yourself off, never leave your room. Being alone in the spiritual sense, it's a lot better. I no longer do any of that and am basically disgusted with most of my past behavior. The worst things I still do now are smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. I've grown to appreciate the Christian values I was raised with, but I have a very hard time with the idea of going back to believing. Between that and the constant barrage of the terrible shit and the visceral feeling of seeing it for what it really is, I feel like I'm losing my mind. How do you go on in this burning empire? Like I said, it's not something I can articulate. It's something that comes from every wordless message that every cell in my body sends me. That's the voice of God. I have stopped putting my faith in my fellow man. I forgive them. I try not to hold hatred for them. But you don't worship that which you forgive. You don't worship that which needs forgiveness. And people in response to this have told me, well, you put faith in the pilot, that the pilot's going to do a good job if you go on an airplane. And I say, and I think to myself, wait, I trust them to do their job because I'm paying them. I paid for the ticket. My ticket goes towards their salary in part. They have an incentive to do what they do. There's an exchange going on. There's no faith necessary. There might be trust necessary, but it's not like I'm going to put my faith in this person and worship the feet at their feet, worship the ground they walk on. No, I'm paying them to do their job. That is completely different. But I get it. That doesn't have anything to do with what you're saying. It's just something I felt the need to address, something somebody told me recently. But look, if you live the right way, do the right things for the right reasons, informed by what God says is right, you will start believing. Like I've said before, faith, true faith, it's trade school. It's not university. It's not an academic subject. You have to have the faith that what God says how to live is the right way. Once you start doing it, you'll realize, oh yeah, that's right. All this stuff in the Bible that they talked about, all this wisdom, they said this stuff for a reason. They weren't making this shit up. But, lots of people, they like to focus on the children's stories. It's like, God's not real. It's so implausible. It is. It's completely juvenile. I don't know. I'm having a Hillary Clinton coughing fit. What is Middle America? The Midwest? I think it's more of a state of being than it is an actual location, to be honest with you. I always thought Middle America was it's made up of suburbs and farms and rural areas. That's Middle America to me. It's not like big city living, universities, television studios. That's not Middle America to me. Middle America is average people that you could actually approach. And they can approach you. That's what Middle America is to me. Ordinary people doing ordinary things. Next, SCF, I'm the head covering guy from last week, and I want to thank you for responding to my question. I have a few things I want to say, and the first one is also the last time I will be mentioning head coverings, as I don't want to get on your nerves, but I feel the need to provide at least one set of verses in the Bible that speak of it. 1 Corinthians 11, 2 through 16 is where it mentions the head coverings. The most common argument given against them is that this was simply a practice of the time, something that was only important to their culture. But this is far from the truth. In reality, Paul refers to nature itself in this conversation. Although he is referring to hair length at the time, in grammatical sense, he's connecting the hair and head coverings together. And nature is timeless, which means there is no culture context for head coverings. It's just something the Bible says to do. If you're into grammatical analysis, Control F for pulpit commentary on the following page for some smart analysis of what these verses mean. Next, I would like to ask a question of permission. One day I plan to be in business-related things, and there's many questions I have regarding morality of business. So I was wondering if you'd be okay with me asking those business questions periodically throughout the next threads. They're the types of questions I don't feel 100% on, and having perspective from you and fellow CF fans would be beneficial. Yeah, ask whatever you want. Technically what I do sell products on Bandcamp, but if I were to describe it to another businessman, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. What I do is pretty unique. But I guess the fundamental of it is that I am providing a product or service, however you want to consider, that people are, they demand it. They want it. People buy what I make, and that's good. I'm very appreciative of that. It's not like I'm ripping people off. I think that's the ethical thing to do. That's the moral thing to do. It's not like I'm releasing an hour of silence with the episodes of Common Filth Extra. It is content. It is exclusive new content, and, people don't complain. Give people their money's worth, don't rip them off, and, I think that's pretty simple. So, yeah, you can ask business questions, though. I don't care. Hey CF, I was not raised religious. I always discarded religion as silly dumb people trying to find explanations for things they are too lazy to learn. Lately I've been growing out of this very childish point of view, and your videos helped a lot. I started reading the Bible and I'm shocked at the amount of life lessons and wisdoms it includes that are still very valid today. I realized it's not just a book with some silly stories. It's a manual on how to live a good life and how to build a strong society. I do have one problem, and I hoped you could maybe help me with it. Evolution. Evolution states that everything has a common ancestor, and over the course of millions of years, it evolved into everything we see around us every day. This has proved to be very likely, but how can it be true if God created everything? With the theory of evolution, that common ancestor is, in a way, God. Both options have some flaws. The theory of evolution is very flawed, as it states that dirt/rocks turned into a cell, and from then on, evolution happened. That is just ridiculous. No way did mankind get the self-awareness and morals from cells dividing and fish deciding to walk on land. Creationism could be flawed because if they find bones from 100 states of an animal, for example whales, where one is a land hippo, 50 is a whale with legs, and 100 is a regular whale, That either means evolution is right or that God created everything 100 times and we now live in the 100th creation. This may seem a bit silly, but I just can't get over the fact that God may have not been the one that created us all. I don't see how anything other than God could have created us and gave us self-awareness and morals. I believe the Bible is factual, but how can that be true if there is evidence of something that goes directly against Genesis? I personally don't believe evolution is the reason of how we are today, but I just can't ignore the factual evidence evolution carries with it. I know the creation is only a small part of the Bible, but it does create some very important questions about God. Was he or was he not our Father? I would really love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Love the show and keep fighting the good fight, God bless. I think that people who fixate on this are missing the point because it is a moral tale. It's not a biological tale. The biology is just is how things work. Science is how things work, not why things work. And what we need to consider is that God is constant. God is unchanging. The world, very changing. It is very stupid to place your faith in imperfect things. And what does evolution tell us? That a previous iteration of something was imperfect given the context. Fixating on the age of the earth and the dinosaurs and dinosaur bones and all this stuff is very strange, especially when you're talking about something that has to do with the human spirit, human morality, human behavior. And to use dinosaur bones and the age of the earth as a way of somehow invalidating how man should behave himself, invalidating the concept of sin, it is so absurd I can't find the right words to express just how absurd I find it. So that's all I really can say about the subject, and I appreciate the time you took and the sincerity with which you wrote, but you know, sometimes there's just not a whole lot I can elaborate on. So I'll go to the next. Hey, Common Filth, this isn't much of a question as much as a recommendation to you. I'm sure you've realized that you gained a cult following despite our numbers being small, and a lot of these people look to you as a leader. The biggest thing I can really say is that as we look into this dark and deepened abyss, to watch that it doesn't consume you. I'm not sure if you felt this, but the more I read and look into the world, the more and more I see it destroyed, and the more and more I find myself alone without anyone to really turn to, and this loneliness has begun to consume me and turn into rage, which in turn began to consume me further. I feel powerless. I feel like I have to watch the woman I love torn apart by hundreds of thousands of wolves. I've seen this happen to my friends that I talk to online, this rage eating away at them. I think I even see it in you. You seem calmer and less surprised at these creatures. You appear to be in a state of neither sadness nor joy. You've stopped caring. Just make sure you don't lose your humanity, okay? Look, I haven't stopped caring. If I stopped caring, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here recording. I wouldn't be talking into this microphone. I wouldn't be reading your comments and questions. So I do care. I care deeply. But I'm not going to express how much I care in a way that comes off as complaining about how much life sucks and how everything is unfair. No, nobody wants to hear that. People want things to be put into a context rather than just everything sucks, everything is terrible, blah, 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 blah. It's so unfair. Why'd I have to be born? Nobody wants to hear that. And, you know, it's like I'd be lying if I didn't feel like that at some points, at some time, but it's just not, it's not productive. I have to find a different way to express it. I have to find a more honest, productive way to express it. Make sure that this isn't just a faucet of hate for the sake of hate. I'm not saying, but to hate for the sake of love. Yeah, I'm not saying to hate for the sake of hate. Like I said, if it were just hate for the sake of hate, I'd be doing illegal things. I'd be taking it to its logical extreme. But I don't. This is out of love, not hatred. That is for your love of something to become so strong that you must protect it. Even bring up the things that do bring you joy, even if it's something as simple as the smell of rain or the street lamps in the dead of night. Just something that reminds us that there's something in life worth fighting for. I know you like to say find it yourself, and I agree, but so many of us are close-pinned in and in so far deep that we can't find joy in life anymore. It's temporary. This is a temporary thing because what you're describing is something I've experienced at different points in my life. And there's not some breakthrough, some logical thing that you can point to and say, that's the thing that got me out of my funk, that broke me of my doldrums. It's not just one thing. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being. And it's not just that one thing that's going to bring you out of it. A lot of us are only still alive because we haven't found anything worth dying for, anything worth believing in. We only see the world that we reject, and that rejects us. We don't see anything else. Perhaps you can change that. Well, look, what you can see is that there's a lot of people like you. Anybody that submits an email, a question, or a comment to the Reddit thread, those are people like you. There are people out there. It's difficult to find. And a lot of what you're feeling is a function of social atomization. And if you do belong to a group of people, they're just enablers. They enable dysfunction. And look, I get it, but it's not a logical thing. It's not something you'd say 1 + 1 = 2. 1 0 1 0 beep boop beep. This is what will break me of my depression. It's not one thing. You have to strive for it. You have to strive for it to make that your state of being, where you don't feel complete despair all the time. And I'm not going to say this because, it could be a different thing, but what you're feeling is your faith in man dying. You're feeling that, and you're feeling the pain of that. I felt the pain of it too. You can hear it in my voice on some episodes. Faith in man, bad idea. So thank you for taking the time to write. And I'll pray for your well-being. I will. And just be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself. You will break out of it. Next. Howdy, CF. First of all, sorry if the video I sent you about puppy play triggered you really hard. Just wanted to make a point of how this shit isn't as niche as some people might say. Although I really enjoyed the commentary you gave on it. Well, thank you. Thank you for enjoying. Anyway, as always, here are the questions. Why do people really fall hook, line, and sinker to this whole messiah vibe that some people like Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders have? Basically, why do they elevate them to a status that they shouldn't be elevating to in the first place? Because they're godless, they are lost, and they're like, oh, this person will save us. It's like I said, they're hitting the panic button. They've lived a life of moral apathy, and this is the result of it. They assign all of these qualities, both positive and negative, that aren't really there. For example, I've been following the Trump campaign. I've been listening to his speeches, and I think it's really interesting. And I think that people's reaction to him is really interesting as well, because a lot of people, they're assigning qualities to him that aren't really there. Like, for example, he's racist, he's white pride worldwide and all this stuff, 1488 and all this stuff, and I've listened to his stuff. He's very, very politically correct when it comes to race. About as politically correct as anybody else. If he was like, oh, fuck black people, fuck Mexicans, fuck this, fuck that, like a lot of his fringe followers are, he wouldn't be getting the endorsement of people like Pastor Manning of the Outlaw Church, who's somebody I like a lot. But assigning these savior qualities, I think, is a function of psychosis. Seeing something that isn't actually there. Just like the whole, oh, Donald Trump's a racist, this, blah, blah, that. He isn't. That's what you want it to be. It's psychosis. It's hallucination. That's what I make of it. That's my interpretation. As you and I know, those kids from the internet age really like to elevate gays to a high status to the point of being gay. But I wonder if they will still hold that status if one of them decides to have a friendly meetup with an aristocrat and then on the morning find out that their neg hole got paused. Will they still call them gay after said experience? Well, they figure, well, how much worse can it get at this point? And then they'll really get into the community. And that's what I think. And again, I don't understand why kids pay tribute to this so frequently. What would you say is the biggest weakness of humanity as a whole? That's too broad of a question. That is too broad of a question. There are too many weaknesses, all of which I cover on this show. And I don't think any one is, some might be bigger than the others, but they all add up. It's all weakness, it's just different kinds. So I don't think that there's one biggest. I think that there are many equal ones, but it's just too big of a subject to even start. What would you consider to be your best episodes of Common Filth Radio and Common Filth Extra that you've made, and also the Tumblristas, including the raw ones? I think it's episode 19 is one of my favorite episodes of Tumblristas, and Common Filth Radio, it's difficult to pinpoint a favorite. I don't know, I thought the whole from 70 to 79, those were excellent episodes of Common Filth Radio. And as for Common Filth Extra, it's difficult because I don't go back and listen to a lot of what I do. And in the moment, I feel good about stuff, but once that moment passes, it all blends together. But I think it's all good. I wouldn't put it out there if I thought it was substandard stuff. So, but Tumblrista's episode 19 is just something that I'm particularly proud of. I think that episode turned out really well, and a lot of the recent ones have been really good as well. And as for the Tumblrista's Raw episodes, I have not looked back at those in a while. Like I said, I don't look back at a lot of my content. If I did, I wouldn't have time to make new content. How do I become from a skinny nigga with a fro to a slightly bigger nigga who's a killer with a flow? You're gonna have to ask Trillium about that one. What day is your birthday so that everyone here can give you a lot of gifts? Also wish you a happy birthday. Hey, everything is a gift. My audience is a gift all on its own. Anybody that buys my stuff on Bandcamp, that's a gift. Everything I am appreciative of. So a birthday to me is just another day when I get to do this. And that's all for now. And remember, what the merchant sells, the goyim buys. Very true. Hello, Common Filth. Happy Easter in advance. I hope you're doing well. And I think I might have more after this one. Okay, we'll try. In some previous episodes, you stated that belief in God is something emotional rather than intellectual. I understand why you would say this, and I don't think you're wrong. So I'll get back to that in a bit, but I bring this up because of how we all know modern Western society has placed so much value on emotionalism, and how people get addicted to entertainment, which can be a form of emotional manipulation, especially if it lacks any substance. So it's not surprising if people get mixed up about believing in something, feeling something about it, loving it, and knowing it. If belief in God doesn't have anything intellectual about it, isn't there danger of belief being reduced to just feelings? And so loving God without knowing God, it makes the quality of belief in God at the same level as those celebrities who love each other and then get divorced in a few months. For example, I have a feeling that supposedly Christian support for gay marriage will leave the religion because they're so intellectually lazy or dishonest as to believe something like God is love, therefore love is God. And since love is all about nice feelings, then gay is okay. Or to ask questions like, how could there be a God if there's so much suffering in the world? It all seems like we have regressed to an infantile mortality of unpleasantness bad, pleasantness good. Yeah, absolutely. And it is a form of intellectual laziness. And what people don't understand is that if there is no God, then there is no basis of understanding that our own thoughts are valid. They're just random if there is no God. But you do bring up a good point. It can't be entirely emotional. You have to have balance. In the past, I've described God how I've arrived at God. And how I've arrived at God is more through listening, more through feeling rather than looking at a spreadsheet saying beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Stupid. Stupid to just place a premium on that, rather. Anyone can believe and love God without great study of theology, the same way a person who knows theology can be at the same time proud or greedy or cruel, and generally be degenerate and wicked. Knowledge does not supply for love if love is absent. Similarly, a virtuous man may be ignorant, but ignorance is not a virtue. It would be a strange God who could be believed in and loved better by knowing less. How can anyone trust and love what they don't know? So wouldn't you say there is some intellectual effort necessary in believing in God? Oh yeah, absolutely. And given the average intelligence of your average atheist, you do bring up a good point. Now, here's why I don't think you're entirely wrong about belief in God not being purely intellectual. Peter Hitchens, in his book Rage Against God, summed up that many people are brought to faith more through the beauty of poetry and art rather than through intellectual debate. In this respect, I can agree with you about how necessary an emotional component is in believing in God. I've encountered too many people, and perhaps I'm one of them, who turn to God and the faith into a sort of abstraction that makes them unable to relate to other people, and perhaps this is a good time for me to take up making art again. Good art connects with people at some emotional level, and I've stopped making art because I found a real job and realized how disgusted I was by the artistic community that I've hung out with during college. The turquoise-haired, lesbian, and passive-aggressive hipster crowd. You know how it is, politically leftist and narcissistic. Narcissistic works are praised, and then everyone participates in a giant masturbatory circle about how clever they are over cheese and wine. They pretend they're above commercialism and selling out, and then complain they don't have enough money. Someone asked last week if you listen to Christian music, and I was immediately reminded of an episode of King of the Hill where Bobby encounters a sort of youth-oriented church, and Hank says, "You're not making Christianity better, you're making rock and roll worse," as a critique of making Christianity appealing by tying it with fads and trends. Yeah, I thought that was a really good episode. I like King of the Hill, actually. It's one of the few TV shows I remember large chunks of. It's really good. Really good show. Are you familiar with Johann Sebastian Bach's music? Bach helped me with my faith, even though he was Lutheran, and I am a Catholic. For me, he explains scripture with his music that emotionally fleshes it out, but doesn't spoon-feed everything. Yeah, I'm familiar with the basics of classical music, but it's not something I've thrown myself into to any meaningful extent. But yeah, really good comment. And like you've said, people are more influenced by works of beauty than works of logic. And I've said this before, people are only influenced by facts to only a very minor extent. So fixating on them entirely is, you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to appeal to people on a human level rather than a mathematical, a computer level. Hey CF, this is my first time writing, so I apologize if it's badly written. No, don't worry about it. It's about me and my best friend of almost 10 years and about how we've recently grown apart. We're both 17, he's a virgin, I'm not. This will be relevant later. We went through elementary school together but chose different high schools. I chose a trade school while he chose a gymnasium and plans to go to college. Meanwhile, he still doesn't know what he wants out of life. We were pretty much of the same opinion on all fronts until our first year of high school. I took an interest in white nationalism and traditionalism, and he started to support liberalism and all the buggery that goes along with it. Even when I repeatedly beat him in arguments, he just changes the topic and lives in his little hug box. I even showed him Tumblristas and some CF Extra, and he called you a paranoid religious lunatic. Well, what am I paranoid of exactly? I always feel like somebody's watching me. Is that what I'm saying? Am I saying, oh, this is going to happen? Oh my God. No, I'm talking about what has already happened. Paranoia. Paranoia is unfounded. It's ridiculous. I'm not making predictions. I'm not making end of the world predictions. I'm talking about what's there. What I talk about is mostly inspired by current events. It's ridiculous. Anyway, back to topic. I had a massive argument with him about what we want in life and just life in general. It started with him asking me if he should have sex with one of our mutual friend's exes. I told him he shouldn't because the friend is a douchebag and would make fun of him with, "LOL, you got sloppy seconds," or something to the sort. He said he's also second guessing it because of morals and respect for our friend. I told him that if he wants to take the morals argument, he shouldn't have sex with anyone and wait for the one. He shouldn't have sex with anyone and wait for the one. He laughed at me. I told him about how sex really was, that I regret it and it was nothing more than mud dick tingles. He said, "That's exactly what I want. Hook up with a random girl and fuck her silly, no bullshit, just passion." How can you be passionate about something you know nothing about? It's ridiculous. When I asked him why he wants a one-night stand, he said he's never been good with relationships and that it's always gone wrong for him. So he's just going to have sex with her just for the sake of having sex and that he knows he'll regret it, but he wants to experience it anyway. What a dork. Then he went on to say that he's afraid of being average. And when I asked what average was, he said being with only 3 or 4 girls before settling down to a wife you'll fuck every other Friday and being stuck in a dead-end job. That's less than average. Why don't you be devoted to that which has earned your devotion? It's so stupid. That's not average. That's substandard. Oh, 3 or 4 sluts. Oh, I don't know how to have a relationship. I don't know how to have a relationship. You're already below average, you idiot. Next part is my favorite. I asked him, what would be a good life? According to you, it's hedonism. And he just told me, fuck off, I don't need to explain myself. I don't want to be 60 and the proudest thing of my life is to raise a kid. Oh, so he wants to be the proudest thing in his life. Wow, I slept with a lot of girls. Yeah, that people will remember me by that. Whereas your kids will outlive you. They'll remember you by that. They're not gonna put on your gravestone, "Here lies so and so. He had a lot of sex." What an idiot! What an idiot! Get rid of this fucking retard. I just had to get it off my chest and give you an insight into the mind of your average millennial and their very skewed perception of sex and relationships. I think this is the beginning of the end of our friendship. What are your 2 cents on this situation and the whole issue of society valuing sex over anything else? What causes it, and what can I as an individual do about it? Well, you don't fall into the trap. That's what you can do about it. And what causes it? There are no standards. We're a bunch of pigs without any standards. And again, I know even pigs have more standards than what people have become. So your friend's a dumbass, a self-destructive dumbass, and don't allow yourself to get caught up in it. And we'll close out with this. Hello, CF. First question, ever apologize if it was already asked. You made 80 episodes of CFR and already over 50 episodes of Tumblristas. That's a lot, and not even including the stuff on Bandcamp. You spend a lot of time on all this stuff. How do you feel about all this time you spent and what keeps you motivated to continue doing this? I'm asking this because I personally can't continuously do things. Even if I like what I do, I have to switch to something else. It caused me some trouble in life, and I feel really bad about it too. Have a good day, and thank you for all the goodness you bring to us. Well, there are more things I do than just this. You know, it's not like this eats up all my time. There's other things I do for both enjoyment and for necessity. And I understand having trouble with focusing on just one thing. I've had trouble with it before, but that's where discipline comes in. You're not the first person to experience this kind of thing, this lack of discipline, and you won't be the last. But you need discipline. You need discipline in order to do something, because at times it's gonna suck. I struggle with that. There are times where it's like, shit, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do for an episode of Tumblristas? What am I gonna do for an episode of this? But I have the discipline. I say, you know what? I do this weekly show, and that's my discipline. I say, I'm gonna make sure I get it done once a week. And you have to set that goal for yourself. You have to set a framework for yourself. You have to give yourself a system within which to work. Because I get it, just doing it all day, every day, that's not sustainable. And I think that's what you're struggling with. You're looking at this thing, whatever it is, as if it's something you need to do every waking hour. And that's just stupid. You're going to get burnt out on it. So that's why you have to look at a thing and say, okay, I'm going to work at this for X amount of hours on these days of the week, and you'll start to become more disciplined. And that's all. Nobody says it's going to be pleasant all the time or pleasant at all, but it can't be pleasant all the time. It can't be happy all the time. That can't be your primary goal. Things are going to suck, and you know what? That's fine. If nothing sucks, then it's like, how do you know what's good? So now that I've said all that, I think this episode has come to its conclusion. Thank you very much for listening as always. Don't forget to check out my stuff on Bandcamp. And until next time, take care of yourselves, be good to each other. Talk to you later.
Grown, ain't I? The skinny nigga with the fro to the slightly bigger nigga who's a killer with the flow. Went from YouTube beats and SoundCloud, nigga. The only difference now is that I found Twitter. Fuck it, it's struggle rap, man. They never see the trouble that I'm going through. The way I sing, they think I live in bubble wrap. Fuck all that, even though I'm on some poppin' shit. With my niggas as my witness, I'm a nigga who can spit. Don't believe me? Overlooking my potential, I'm that poet to a phone, that poet was to a pencil. My mental is similar to that of a lion, and I'm the king of